No, I don't recall having known they were being done. And of course I knew when they were released. Harry Middleton talked it over with me. I didn't set myself up as a supreme evaluator, but I thought, yes, it happened. It's as raw and real and as close to the essence of the facts as it's possible to get at this late date. So we did, and I'm glad we did. And just bits and pieces where where I am on there with Lyndon. No, he didn't, as a matter of fact, but not that I recall. But no, it wouldn't have bothered me. Once more, it happened. I knew vaguely that it was happening and likely to happen. Well, anyhow, if somebody had been under the bed with a microphone anywhere, those things happened. So no, I wasn't hurt, shocked, annoyed, or anything. Mostly, I just thought this is the real, raw stuff of what went on, so it's all right. I expect that every last woman who walks into that house in that role has the same motivation and the same sense of where things level off. I wanted to take care of my husband, keep him able to do his job, assist him in any way I could. Not that I wanted him to. I needed him, wanted him just like, but I didn't think of that was his obligation. It was, I just felt that way because of a lifetime of having a love affair with nature and wanting all the other people of my country to have that opportunity, particularly the young folks. Oh, Lord, whenever there's a time of heavy lifting, if you understand what that phrase means, I think, oh, goodness, I wish he were here to tell me what to do. And mostly, I'm sorry he is not here to watch our two children and the way they have matured and become really, in my estimation, terrifically good citizens. Just good human beings, good for their families and their communities. Oh, Linda is the very busy wife of Chuck Robb, the junior senator from Virginia, and about to be engaged in the arduous business of helping him, and this would be his third election to the Senate. It begins, I think it's already begun, but it is next November that the election actually takes place. Three girls, and as different as can be, and we have, Lord, I know how lucky I am, and it's so good to know it when you're having something good, because do not think it will last forever. But my children all like each other, as well as loving each other, and we all have a good time together. What more can you really ask? Well, in the first place, they have had splendid educations. Oldest one went to Princeton and the University of Virginia. The second one went to a prep school, Phillips something, and then to the University of Virginia, and then to law school and the University of Texas, which was a delight for me because I saw a lot of her then. The youngest one is still in college, her last year at Duke. To my amazement and pleasure, she's taking something I can understand and applaud, and nobody seems to be taking it much now, and that is math. And she wants to teach math. Uh, and I think that is an achievable and extremely useful thing to do. Oh, Lucy is close to me in Austin, Texas. She is helping her husband, who is a Brit, named Ian Turpin, but she did not take his name. She's still Lucy Baines Johnson. But they're the most married folks I know. And she lives within 10 minutes ride from my house in Austin, and helps him run what is left of our family business. She has 4, 1 son, 3 daughters, and now, and you couldn't believe it to look at her, she's so very young looking. 5 grandchildren. And then her husband had a son by a previous marriage, so they have a big household. Yes. Was I just mentioning them? 5. Lucy's grandchildren, my grandchildren. Only 1 little boy. And that is something that we're going to have to start asking young men when they come to have dates with whoever is the present generation of our young girls. How many boys have run in their family? How many sons, grandsons, great-grandsons, and so forth, because we are mighty short on grandsons. Actually, astonishingly little in terms of those who did not know him. The oldest 2, Lynn, knew him, and that is Lynn, Lucy's son, and Linda's daughter, and 2 more just barely knew him as babies, but not really. But let me tell you something funny. I think the only time Lyndon, our grandson, was ever impressed by his father, grandfather being president, was when I was leafing through an album and said, and this is a great aviator, Charles Lindbergh. He came to dinner at the White House, and here is he and Mrs. Lindbergh. And Lyndon's eyes got big, and he said, "Nene, did you all know Lindbergh?" And I said, "Yes, we did." Although hardly anybody really knew him well, in my opinion. But we knew him, and we were mighty, mighty proud of him. Oh, yes. He's a flyer and in love with it. Very proud of it. He is also, he's going through law school, is a member of an excellent law firm in San Antonio, Texas, and he loves the law. But the romance of his life was in a plane. Most infants are taught to call their grandparents some usually silly sort of name, and they picked up Nene for me. I don't know why. We are sitting in the old stone room of the ranch, which had belonged to Lyndon's uncle and aunt. In the course of time, she had become a widow for quite a few years, and the ranch was run down and neglected somewhat. And but Lyndon had a great affection and memory of it, because as a little boy, having been born down the road about a mile, he used to walk up here, his mother not knowing where he was and being worried when she found out, and visit his aunt and uncle, and ask for a stick of candy, which his uncle a local judge always had in his roll-top desk. He'd turn it back, and there would be some red apples. Never omitted the word red in front of apples, and stick candy. And he'd give him one of each, and that made his day. And so Aunt Frank, and that unfortunately was her name, never should do it to a woman. She began to feel the oppression of living a long way from a doctor, a hospital, neighbors especially. It could be a forlorn sort of a place if you didn't like living in the country, which I do. I come every weekend if I can. There are many things that draw me. Some no longer do because I used to walk, take long walks. Unfortunately, can't do that anymore. But there's an indoor heated swimming pool, which is about the only exercise I now can tolerate. Well, Lyndon liked nothing better than to return home. He didn't want to go to some fancy resort or to travel, both of which I liked. But he liked to get home. It had the pull of a magnet for him. And I liked it too. Yeah. Oh, goodness, yes. I'm sure that every member of the cabinet has been here. Sometimes I'm going through those guest books and see how many names I can find. I think they'll all have been here. And a majority of the Senate and cabinet members, and just a mixture of interesting people. One that has the aura of achievement on it, I just dearly love. Right up the road, 1 mile, there's a little one-room schoolroom where, as a little boy of 4, being pretty smart and extremely active and hard for his mother to keep track of, he started going to school when he was 4 years old, and he sat on the teacher's lap. And he remembered his time there so fondly, and in the course of the presidency, he harked back to that quite a lot. He passed a bucket full of bills one springtime, I think it must have been 65, relating to elementary education. And so he picked up the phone and called his first grade school teacher many, many years afterward. Gosh knows how many it was, but I have to think about it. She was alive. He had kept up with her through the years with Christmas cards and maybe a letter every now and then. And he said, if I send you a round-trip ticket for you and your daughter or somebody, could you come out here while I sign the elementary education bill up here at this old schoolhouse where you used to teach me? And she said, let me think about it. And it turned out that she could and did. It was a wonderfully, it ought to have been on the cover of what Rockwell used to paint for the cover of Saturday Evening Post. And the children, by now old men and women, who had been with him when he was 4, and there would be about 5 of them in the beginning. I don't know what life had narrowed them down to. But anyhow, we had it on the grounds of this old schoolhouse. He took out a wooden table, put some benches around it, set up the campers, and had the best time. Miss Kate, that was her name, Miss Kate Dedrick. She was right there by him, this time not holding him in her lap. And and they both reminisced about it. And also, he had the children from one of the most seminal experiences of his life, and he dearly loved going down to teach. His first paid job, I think, at Catula, Texas, which was a segregated Latin American school, from which he took away more than the students did, I think. More understanding of the world, more useful lessons. And he got a whole bunch of those, another segment of his life. And then several of the students from where he taught at Sam Houston High School, I think it was called, in Houston. And he taught accurately enough. I mean, it just fit. Most of his life had a wonderful sequence of fitting, and the current part, whatever it was, you could see the foundations for it, little tracks a long ways back. So what he taught in Houston was civics and public speaking and government, just the whole array of them. And you were asking what important events here on a very low key but family important key to me was to have my father, Thomas Jefferson Taylor, and my brothers, Thomas Jefferson Taylor the third, I think, whatever he was, and Tony Taylor, both mature men, all three of them great big men, well above 6 feet, coming down and investigating, seeing where I lived, what Lyndon was like at home. We had already been married by that time, perhaps 8 years. But this was their first visit to the ranch. We didn't get the ranch until 52. And I never have any trouble remembering the date because it's right out there in the cement on the front walk. When the cement had just been poured, he got a sharp stick and went out and wrote the LBJ Ranch, welcome to in front of it, the LBJ Ranch. 12 years, that's 6 terms, was beginning on 13. Actually 12, about 5 years and 2 months, I think. Time is not allocated fairly. I had an awfully good time in the vice presidency. I can't say that he did. But because of Mrs. Kennedy's health, and because I was young and strong and vigorous in those days, I got called on to substitute for her a good deal. I liked meeting all those strange people from far away places with the strange sounding names. I had a real good several trips around the world, so to speak, and knowing and getting to meet chiefs of state or other officials. Well, naturally, because of the language, I had more affinity with everybody who spoke English. That is a sad thing, and I just did think it was so wonderful that Mrs. Kennedy spoke several languages. I liked the British. Almost every one of them I felt very much at home with. Admired their country. I liked the Shah of Iran. I know that was something that ceased to be popular, but given the cards he was given to play, I think he did a lot for his country, and I've often wondered what happened to all those women who were allowed to quit wearing the veil. The doors of education opened to them. The whole world opened to them to a sizable extent. Well, I like trying to learn about whatever Lyndon was doing, because sometimes that great old house would have as many as 3 groups of people coming, business leaders of the United States, people who had won prizes in regard to physics and chemistry and the arts. It was a very bursting time with energy, with I've lived through 3 such periods of times in the United States, and I'm so glad I have. Well, it felt good. That was a report card I would have wished to have. And because that is the work you can do, that is the opportunity that fate lays on your plate. And what I wanted most was to make Lyndon's life as smooth and easy as I could, and keep him eating regular meals at regular hours, which proved a task I was not equal to, but it was as good as I could do, and much better than if I had not been there, as I was told every time I went away on some trip of my own. Things that I myself didn't like about me. I can't say that they bothered me much. I think you have to be tough and just willing to weigh the good against the bad in that job. Many people ask me, do you wish your children had gone into politics? And I used to say, if they were smart enough, good enough, tough enough, yes, but I sure would want them to be all 3, because you could get terribly hurt. Yes, but there was so much more that I did like. On balance, I think it's a wonderful life. I don't know. Nobody likes this business of having raised so much money. But in those days, it was so infinitely less difficult and I guess I didn't know it, but I really had the glory time of the political life to some extent. And we were just getting out of the time when, at least from the state of Texas, we were an agricultural state where action took place, political action, on the courthouse square and on radio and on traveling around every little town in your district. If you were a member of the House, became more difficult as you progressed to the Senate, and impossible when you reached the presidency. Oh, goodness, yes. We had been talking about this for, well, ever since actually we ran in 64 and won. My opinion is that he knew he didn't have, in case he won, he didn't have 4 more years, 16-hour days left in him. They were wearing thin and costing too much, and just pulling up your spirits right out of your boots and going on. He knew if he lived, he would not be able to do the sort of job as president that he wanted to do. And something that haunted us, and I wonder if they have that same feeling, I rather think they must, on everybody, was the picture of Wilson, Woodrow Wilson, which was painted, oh, such a shame, after he'd had the first stroke. I think, at any rate, his face looks like it. And indeed, the last one of FDR. Earlier pictures of FDR looked like he could live forever, work forever, and enjoy it. And those always gave us reassurance and happiness. And so we didn't want to reach that point. We wanted, if we got sick, we wanted to be sick on our own time, not on the government's time. I did, indeed, and I think everybody around us did. His hair got steadily whiter, and his walk less bouncy and slower. And then I guess when it was well, it became markedly so. And then after the first year we were out, it was about 2 months. He'd been out about 2 months when he had a first attack of angina, which we had been warned by our doctor when we had that first heart attack in 1955 would no doubt overtake us. It didn't overtake us, blessedly. We worked free of angina for about 16 years, I think. I haven't counted it up too clearly. But when that pain hits you, you can't, no amount of courage or call to duty and determination, forget it. You can't buckle up and go on and do what you need to do. Quite a lot, and as much as he could. As I said, he did not, unlike me, like to travel. He did like to go to Mexico. He had an affection for the people of Mexico. He'd made some good friends down there. We would go and stay in the home of one of them, and the former President Aliban. Later on, I rented houses. He liked to go there, and that's about all. He liked to come home. He liked to get his neighbors over to tell him about the crops and the local politics and everything that was going on. He liked to go to football games. And he was crazy about our coach at that time. He was quite a remarkable man. Darrell Royal. Yes, in our bedroom. To my lasting regret, I was not. I had gone on the Board of Regents. When I was asked by the governor, I said, no, sir, I'm sorry. Great honor, appreciate being asked, love the university. Wish I could, but I can't. My husband is not well. I think I better be here. And Lyndon, who had nothing against eavesdropping, was in the next room. And as soon as I hung up the phone, he said, Lady Bird, come in here. And I went in. And he said, who's that? I told him. And he said, do you remember all those times I used to ask some able, successful, patriotic, I thought, businessman to come and join me in working on some thing for the government? Maybe it was a place in the cabinet, a government board. I said, yes. And he said, what did you think? And I knew so well what he was talking about because that had happened several times. He just wanted to call them to duty. And if they couldn't come, and so many of them couldn't, they had just seen what a hard job it was. And they'd all say something about, not all, some came, but many didn't. And I'd say, you were mighty fussy, and you just thought, why can't they give 2 years of their lives to government? This won't last long. And he would be so stricken with disappointment because he just thought just being able to put in whatever you had learned in life into the service of your government was a pretty great thing. And quite a few of them said no. Some did. Gratefully, I say, consent to do it. Well, anyhow, I sort of laughed and said, that's what I thought about it. And he said, you call the governor right back and tell him that if he hadn't already appointed somebody, you want to give that a try. And he was a persuasive person. I did. And it was a wonderful job for me. I loved it. I'll always remember it as a good time in my life. Yes, actually, there was a Board of Regents meeting on it 2 or 3 days away, and I used to choose 1 or 2 of the smartest regents and say, come give me a lesson. Teach me what we're going to take up. Teach me why it's good, why it would be bad if we didn't do it. And I was going to have that kind of a session. No, I thought that so often, and it didn't happen. And I certainly didn't think it that morning, else I would not have gone. But it did. Yes, he and I decided that. Actually, we were on our way with a date to see Mrs. Eisenhower at her home in Pennsylvania, you know, out from Washington, Gettysburg. We had a date to see her if she felt like seeing us that day. If not, she had appointed people in charge and people who could tell us the exact way in which they had left their house to the nation in the keeping of the Park Service. When he had his second bad heart attack, he stopped off. He went on the way to the funeral of, good gracious, I hope I've got it right. I think it was the funeral of the governor, a former governor of Tennessee, who was his very dear friend. And then he had just recently, or in a few days, that funeral, and I do not know in which order they took place, and President Truman's funeral took place. And the funerals always had a very strong effect on him. He took them very hard. And so we never got to see Mrs. Eisenhower. He got seriously sick with a heart attack on his way and wound up in the University Hospital of Charlottesville, Virginia. We actually did pattern it exactly on what they had done. They gave it to the Park Service for the use of the federal government, reserving a life estate in whichever of them survived until they died. So that's what we did. And all of these years have passed, 26 years. Is that right? And here I am still. I have been to see many, many presidential homes and have very strong feelings about them. I think they're useful tools to teach history. I think they treat us mighty good. It will come to an end, this business of having Secret Service. I think after this administration, I'm told. So whenever you pass a bill saying something comes to an end, it does not come to an end while that bunch of legislators is in office, but it begins the next year. And that is, I think, what's going to happen to First Ladies. Yes, I do, but I've forgotten. Right after Lyndon and I got home, I proudly said I didn't need them. I was young and strong, and so I didn't have them until about a year had gone by. And then I had a slight automobile wreck. It was slight, but I wound up in the hospital, and it made the newspapers. And then said, "You are going to have them. They're going to drive you from now on." So that's the way I acquired them. I expect I would. In the University of Texas, which I dearly loved, I took first history and philosophy, a major and minor. And then, having finished that and loving it, but still not quite ready to go back to Karnak, which was a very small village, and living. Although I had plans of what to do when I got there. I was going to do over my daddy's old house, which was built before the Civil War. Old red brick house. And so I decided, gee, I'd love to come back to this place and take journalism. The people who just seemed to be right on the front row of whatever's happening and know more about it and sort of nibble at the edges of it seemed to be journalists, newspaper people. And so I took a journalism and got a degree. And then I left. And then I met Lyndon within the first 2 months after being out of the university, and we married within a short time, like about 3 or 4 months. Yes, and of course, who wouldn't? I thought this was the most precipitate, unrealistic, unlikely thing, and of course, I paid no real serious attention to it. I don't know. He would have liked it to be the education president. That is what he placed all his hopes on. He said it's the only passport out of poverty, and it's the one thing that can't be taken away from you, is education. I think it'll probably be civil rights, and I think it is so peculiarly right and appropriate that it should have been a Southern president who managed to do that in spite of some very painful loss of good friends from the South. And I don't think they intended for it to go on forever. I think, well, I'm just a professional Southerner as well as a professional Texan. Oh, I just think he hewed his own path, made his own decisions, but I think we all knew it was going to happen someday. And yes, it would be shake us up like being in a mixed master sort of. But I think I think it will be will over top education as a wretched obstacle along the way which he couldn't solve, couldn't escape, couldn't shake off. And during those days, I think when the bags began to come home, by that I mean they would come in at night on freight trains, and I don't know whether this was good planning or just happenstance, but several times I would be on my way back from a trip to New York from somewhere, and at the station, as I would get off, there would be freight trains, and those bags would be being unloaded and put on to, I don't know what kind of vehicle. And that, I knew what he was doing, and I knew I couldn't help him. Yes, yes, of course. I just say, you're doing the best you can, and I think a lot of those people understand it. And there really isn't much you can do in a situation like that except to say, I'm here. And I'm still interested, but not, I haven't been able to actually read print for about 10 years. I have something called macular degeneration, which makes me, I am called legally blind, because that means I can't read print. Therefore, no signs on the highway am I competent to read and heed. I began to look for substitutes, and I found some. Books on tape are a wonderful resource. And I began to take an interest in clouds. You know, all the different sort of buttermilk clouds and mare's tails and cumulus and stormy clouds. And I began to listen to birdsong as though I had never heard it before. You just naturally seek something else. And I have been fortunate to, in some extent, find it. And then I got all the little helps you can from, one was a machine that magnified and put on a screen, but those things are more or less temporary in my case. Yes, it is. Also, we have a very alert bunch of people here at Park Service, and they tried to open up the night sky for all of the visitors about 3 times in a year, and the autumn season is the best. August is also good. They have descriptions of the night sky with people who know about astronomy, and there is there's a group of people in Austin, Texas, who are very interested in that. Some of them have built their own telescope, and they come out here. This is a good place because there is a slow, gentle rise to the west up the runway. And wait a minute, it is north, landing strip. And on the end of that, there's quite a big open space, and you're supposed to park over at the park itself, get on buses, come over here, and then astronomers talk to you. They give everybody a chance to look through a telescope, and they tell us the names and the meanings and the knowledge of stars through the centuries in differing civilizations. Well, you will really get a laugh out of this because it's taken me forever. But it is The Rise and Fall of Rome. Yeah. And before that, I read I, Claudius, which is a much better read. And gosh, I've learned so much. I had no idea that the spread of agriculture, I did know about the spread of highways and postal system. I learned a lot about what ancient civilizations, Pax Romana, had going for them. It was good. I have a number of friends who are great readers, Jack Valenti among them. And you can get into an easy way of just reading whodunits and suspense books. And so I was a little tired of something that was in no way, I couldn't say I took away anything that increased my knowledge. And Jack Valenti was down here to lay the wreath on Lyndon's grave, which is something we do every August 27th. And he was this year's honoree. And he was just telling me, we got on the subject of books on tape, and he recommended that, and I, Claudius. So I am well into both of them on about tape number 9. I think there's 16 in all. Well, they work with what they've got, and what they have got is the accumulation of facts, and that is only put down accurately or less than accurately by the people who saw those facts emerge and their capability of keeping notes. So you have a pretty wispy, cobwebby set of things to deal with. I think we miss a lot, we get a lot wrong. Generally, we're bound to have gotten a great deal right. Stay healthy. Eat right, get exercise, look joyfully on whatever your job for the day is, because there's so much you can do and learn and help on. But you can only do it if you're pretty strong and well, and I was. I think just the kindness of the Lord, mostly. I always did, though, have a love of exercising, and there was nothing unhappily the matter with my appetite, except too much of it. I fortunately don't have much concern. I just hope that everybody after me enjoys that place as much as I did and feels a sense of, I had my share of it, and it belongs to all the American people, and it belongs a little bit more to those who currently live in it. So I just hope that he or she or all of them will just rejoice in being there, and also realize that time is passing, your days are fixed. Make it all count to the best you can. Well, because Walter was a rare good man. He had stuck by us through thick and thin. He had never flinched from carrying one more load. We used to have a saying around the office, everything winds up on Walter's desk. It did. I think we must bear some of the responsibility for whatever breakdown took place. And it was a recoverable breakdown, and he did recover. And he was and remained a wonderful man. And all the rest of the family, and Lyndon, we used to see a good deal of Walter, never enough. I'm sorry about that, But I can understand so much because we were right, I think this was in mid or late October. I think it was unjustly, foolishly. It was a matter of consequence. Thank you.